How's it going, everyone? In this video we're going to be taking apart the Nubia Red Magic 3. Now my first unit I received was defective and it took me a while to get another one. Also, I'm going to let you guys know that taking this phone apart is really difficult. At least the first few steps are quite difficult. Okay, first thing you're going to do, remove your SIM tray from the side of the phone. Next, there are two T4 screws over here on the bottom of the phone that you have to remove. Go ahead and remove those. Now I already took the screws off of mine and separated the screen assembly from the frame. I didn't want to put it back together and pry it back off because it's very difficult, so I'll just tell you guys what you have to do. Now using a plastic pry tool will not work with this phone because it's just too difficult. It's going to break on you and you're not going to be able to pry the screen assembly up from the frame. You're going to need to use a metal pry tool, something thin, to get in between the plastic assembly of the screen and the metal frame of the phone. And once you get it in there, you're going to have to work your way up and just pry the screen up. There's no glue or anything around it, but it's just very difficult to get the screen to separate from the frame. It took me, honestly, I'd say half an hour. I didn't want to put too much pressure to break the screen or anything. Then once you get the screen separated from the frame on one side and lift it up a little bit, you could do the same to this other side, the other corner on the bottom. And then you're going to work your way around the sides, just from the edges, trying to gently pry up a little at a time so you don't damage the screen or break it. Same on the other side, until eventually you have the assembly separated from the frame like this, and you can pry it up, but be careful, there's cables underneath it that you don't want to cut. So once you separate it a little bit, you'll see the cables on the inside. You have one over here and you have one over here right there. The cable over here is just the one that could pop off. You could just lift it up and disconnect it. There you go. This one has a Phillips screw on it. There's a cover that's holding it. You're gonna have to remove the Phillips screw. Once you got the cover removed, you can pop the cable off as well. So at this point you can see the fan assembly right here. That's sitting inside the frame. You have your switch over here on the top left. You also have this connector over here. That goes to the side. Now I'm going to remove this protective tape over here. I can see the cables over here going underneath this flex over here. I don't know if they're soldered on, but I'll see once I lift it up. So there are the cables, they're just soldered on to that flex cable right there underneath it. Alright, in order to remove the fan, there's 4 Phillips screws you have to remove. Go ahead and remove those screws. Alright, once you remove the screws, you're going to have to pry the fan up from the frame. So there it is. So basically it's sucking in some air from the back over here and then I guess distributing it through there and pushing it out from the side, more over here. There's barely any space inside over here, so I guess the little amount of heat that accumulates over here, it just blows it out from the side. Originally I thought this piece would just be plastic, but I guess it has some aluminum inside. So I guess it's just coated black, but it sounds and feels like plastic, but there's some aluminum inside, as you can see when you scrape it off. So that actually makes me feel a little bit better that it has some aluminum inside, transferring the heat. And here's a closer look. See how shallow it is inside. So the thermal pad over here sits on top of the fan assembly here, then transfers the heat inside the assembly, and then it transfers it out with the fan. And then over here you have the cable that leads for the LED lights over here, the strip, down on the back of the phone. So if you needed to, you could just disconnect that and pry it off and replace that. And your fingerprint scanner is over here underneath, and your flash is over here. Alright, now you have 2 Phillips screws you have to remove over here to get access to disconnecting the battery cable. I can go ahead and disconnect your cable over here for the battery. You have 2 more cables over here. Go ahead and disconnect those. You have a black cable over here as well. Pop that off. Now you have 13 Phillips screws left throughout the phone. Go ahead and remove all 13 screws. Or once you have all the screws removed, you can go ahead and lift up this plastic cover over here on top. So basically this plastic cover houses the earpiece speaker. Now at this point you can lift up the main board from top. You have some thermal paste over here, which makes contact with the copper vapor chamber down here and leads to underneath the screen. So on the main board you have one microphone over here. You have a front facing camera over here. The light sensor right there. Your headphone jack obviously over here. And you have your main camera right here. Next on the bottom over here of the speaker assembly, there's one screw holding a metal contact right here. I left it on to show you guys, just make sure you don't lose that. It's this one right here. And then you're going to peel up this tape right here. Now you can remove the speaker assembly. And down here the charger port, in order to replace that, it's on a board right here of its own. You just pop up this cable right here. And then you would disconnect this black cable over here as well. And then you would lift up this vibrator motor off the frame. It's held on with some adhesive underneath it. Just make sure you don't cut the cables over here since they're soldered onto the board. And then at that point you just lift up the charger port board and pry it away from the frame. Now in order to replace the screen, you'd have to basically pry the battery off. There's no pull tabs since it's just a tape. And then once you pry the battery off, you would have access to the cable for the screen. So then you'd have to heat up the screen on the front side and then pry it away from the mid frame and remove the cable through the slit that it has on the mid frame. And then put your cable through for your new screen and apply the new screen back to the front. And then just reverse the process to reassemble the phone. To remove the battery, you just need to pry it up. There's some adhesive underneath it. Just use something plastic like a card or credit card or something. So you can underneath it. Comes off like that. And basically if you need to replace the battery, just put your replacement battery back in, press down on the adhesive, and you'll be done with that. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and put the phone back together. Let's reconnect this cable down here. And I'm going to put the speaker assembly back in. Next we're going to put the motherboard back in. And then we're going to put the earpiece speaker assembly back in. Now go ahead and put your screws back in. Or once all your screws are in place, go ahead and reconnect your cables. Just don't reconnect the battery yet. I put tape back over. Now at this point you can reconnect the battery cable. Now go ahead and place the cover that goes over the cables back in its place and screw it back in. Alright, next we're going to reconnect this cable to the main board over here. Once that's connected, go ahead and put the cover back over. I'm going to screw it back in place. Now at this point you want to reconnect this cable over here to the right side of the board. Like so. Alright, now you're going to put the top in first and make sure it's in. And they're going to seat the rest in. And then go ahead and put your two T4 screws back in. And then go ahead and power on the phone. And you're done. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys in the next video.